Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, the author out there who cannot seem to please his fans by finishing the books that they actually want, but is going on out there and writing some other books on the side that a lot of people seem to enjoy. None other than the creator of Game of Thrones himself, George R.R. Martin, the guy behind the new Hot D over there on HBO Max, House of the Dragon, which the new season will be starting here very shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, George R.R. Martin is out there blasting Hollywood, ladies and gentlemen, blasting Hollywood for all of the exact same things all of us out there that have been fans, or any of us that have been nerds or geeks or just people that are like to apply and stick by the original source material. Well, George is now out there saying the exact same things all of us have been saying for years. Ladies and gentlemen, respect the source material. And this shouldn't come as a shock to anybody at any way, shape, or form, because George has lambasted and said some sideways, not so hot things about the former showrunners of the original Game of Thrones series, especially considering the fact that he absolutely blasted them by saying, well, basically after season 5, they stopped calling me, and he had basically no influence whatsoever. And I think a lot of people can see season 5 is probably being the peak of Game of Thrones, and basically everything started to slowly decline when it came from there, because once again, when you don't involve the original source material, you don't have original source material, thanks George, to actually go from, and you completely and totally cut out the original creator, things generally go sideways. So thank you, George R.R. Martin, for finally showing up to the table and saying all of the exact same things that fans have been saying for literal decades. But that's okay. As we like to say, there is always a seat open at the table for anybody who's willing to come out there and speak the final truth. It's always better late than never, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to check out this article from That Park Place, written by our wonderful John F. Trent, seeing exactly what he has to say about the current state of Hollywood and how they all like to adapt things to fit their modern retellings that we see has been absolutely so successful over the last years. How's that working out for you there, Disney? But anyway, boys and girls, we're going to check out this article, get all the juicy details of exactly what dear Mr. Martin has said. But before we do, if you enjoy our content, if you're watching live, or if you're currently watching this as a video and all by its own, make sure you hit that like button, share it with all your friends, subscribe and or follow if you have not already, and leave us a comment down below and let us know what you think about George and whether or not he should just get back to writing books and stop talking to people out there in the public. But from That Park Place, ladies and gentlemen, George R.R. Martin blasts Hollywood screenwriters and producers for believing they can improve source material. They make it worse. Yes, indeed. Thank you, sir, for saying the exact same thing that all of us fans who have been complaining, who have been called racist, bigots, misogynist, sexist, and every other silly word out there underneath the book have been saying for the exact same years. But like I said, there is always a spot at the table. And boys and girls, if you are watching this live, do remember that you can leave all of your comments down there in the live chat, and I will read all of them as soon as we are done with this article. So if you'd like to see your comments read live, join us Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time for the morning prep. George R.R. Martin bashed Hollywood screenwriters and producers for believing they can improve on the source material of standout authors such as Ian Fleming, Stan Lee, J.R.R. Tolkien, and others when they attempt to adapt their stories to film or television. And here's the best part. He doesn't even list himself among them, but I don't think any of us can deny, after watching and seeing the absolute abomination that was Amazon's Rings of Power, there is no doubt whatsoever that J.R.R. Tolkien and no one over at Amazon knows how to adapt it without making and injecting a whole bunch of their nonsense messaging. And of course, Stan Lee, can anybody look at the current state of the MCU and deny that they have absolutely bastardized some of his greatest creations, and even some of just the creations that he might have taken credit for that he might have actually not created? But that's a story for a different day, ladies and gentlemen. In a recent blog post, Martin decried, everywhere you look, there are more screenwriters and producers eager to take great stories and make them their own. It does not seem to matter whether the source material was written by Stan Lee, Charles Dickens, Ian Fleming, Roald Dahl, Ursula K. Le Guin, J.R.R. Tolkien, Mark Twain, Raymond Chandler, Jane Austen, or, well, anyone. And he's right. We've seen this happen to literally everybody on this list. Now, some of these names I don't know, but the ones that I do recognize, we know we've seen articles about Ian Fleming, Charles Dickens. We've heard about them trying to go back and, modernize their books, or at the very least, put warning labels on these books and on these stories. We saw that happen to Mark Twain with Tom Sawyer. It's absolute insanity. And of course, any Hollywood adaptations, well, I think every fan who's read the book and then seen the movie knows exactly how well that works out from varying degrees. The book is the book. The film is the film, they will tell you, as if they were saying something profound. They make the story their own. They never make it better, though. 999 times out of 1,000, they make it worse. And absolutely. And I know a lot of people absolutely love the Harry Potter movies, right? I get that. Maybe a lot of people, for some people, they were the first introduction to Harry Potter because they're of a younger generation. I grew up with the books, right? I think I got into them about the time book 3 was out. I read through all of them, and I read every single one of them as soon as they released going on forward, right? I despise the Harry Potter movies, okay? Because they left so much out. Not to mention, they screwed over a lot of Ron's heroic lines and gave them to Hermione. Plus, there's no Peeves. How can you have the Battle of Hogwarts without Peeves? And Dumbledore's character, post Goblet of Fire, well, actually, during Goblet of Fire, he no longer becomes Dumbledore. So, yeah. I got issues with those movies as well. So I agree, even though I know those movies are beloved, even though I know they were financially hugely successful. I agree with Martin on this one. Even a franchise as successful as that still made it worse. However, he did note that sometimes they do indeed get it right. He praised FX's recent Shogun adaptation. Once in a while, though, we do really get a good adaptation of a really good book. And when that happens, it deserves applause. I can come across one of those instances recently when I binged the new FX version of Shogun. I think the author would have been pleased. Both old and new screenwriters did honor to the source material and gave us a terrific adaptations, resisting the impulse to make it their own. So yeah, that's George's words. That's like he said. And of course, they talk about, of course, going back to 2022. That's some of the stuff we talked about earlier, where he's talked about some of that kind of stuff and some of the adaptations and the Sandman stuff and everything else. So this is not something we haven't seen before. This is not something we've heard out of him before. This is not something particularly new that we've heard out of him, because he doesn't like the adaptations as well. He says, how faithful do you have to be? Some people don't feel they have to be faithful at all. There's a phrase that goes around, I'm going to make it my own. I hate that phrase. And I think Neil probably hates that phrase too. Of course, talking about the Sandman series. I do. I spent 30 years watching people make Sandman their own. And some of those people haven't even read Sandman to make it their own. They just flip through a few comics or something. And that's something talking about Neil Gaiman has said. And that's why he started making the Sandman stuff himself. But George is right. And of course, like I said, this is something that, hey, yeah, welcome to the party, George. We're so glad you finally made it. We're so glad you're finally here, because at the end of the day, we know this is something that we've all understood has been going on for a very long time. Any fan that's ever read the book and then seen a movie adaptation of any kind knows there's always issues, knows there's things always left on the cutting room floor. Now, whether you agree with what was left on the cutting room floor or not is completely, totally up to you. The Lord of the Rings is a great example of that. The movies, the trilogy, probably one of the best cinematic masterpieces of all time. It will probably go down in history as one of those, if you wouldn't consider it the number one cinematic masterpiece of all time. That book, those movies did an excellent job, especially the extended cuts, of including as much of the source material as was humanly possible. Were there things that they cut out? Absolutely. The burning of the Shire and the having to reclaim the Shire is completely left out. Tom Bombadil, anyone? But I understood their reasonings for it, especially if you understand and talk to the creatives and you listen to them behind it. The movies were already long as hell. And honestly, I'm surprised they went as far as they did with the ending in The Return of the King. I know I literally sat there all the way to the end for like the last 45 minutes, though, thinking I had to pee my brains out. Like, it was absolutely insane. But it's one of them situations where you can do quality, good adaptations. And yes, do we understand as fans, you have to change some things from the books in order to apply it to a television screen or a big screen? Yes, we do understand that. But as long as you don't try to change things just for the sake of changing things, as long as you're not trying to make it your own story or shove your agenda so far up its butt that we can't tell the difference between what's supposed to be your agenda and what's actually supposed to be a story, then you can do good quality adaptations. We've seen them done. You know, Peter Jackson did it with Lord of the Rings. Most people are huge fans of those that loved the books as well. There will always be some contrivers out there and people that don't. But as long as you've pleased the majority of the fans, then at the end of the day, you're going to be good to go. But George R. Martin's right. They think they can improve. They think they can make it their own. They can fill it full of their agenda. We've seen this happen with comic books. We've seen this happen with the MCU. We've seen it happen time and time again. So thanks, George, for showing up to the party. Enjoy your seat at the table. We're all going to continue talking about this, and we're all going to be here. But you know what? I'm glad to add you among the rest of us who have been screaming about this stuff for years, who understand it is wrong, and understands at the end of the day, making something your own means that the only thing they want to do is self-insert and add their agenda. And at the end of the day, that will never make fans happy. And go ahead, keep doing it. We'll keep watching your ratings fail, and we'll keep watching you bomb at the box office. Because at the end of the day, if you make the fans happy, we'll make you rich. If you don't, well, enjoy bankruptcy.